And it it happened.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello,
Hi.
Daddy J. The thing is, we didn't record it. We missed that.
Oh,
You're gonna have to do it again.
We'll have to do it again. We're in Hebrews chapter 11. Good to see you, Daddy J.
Okay,
and
Pastor
everybody
Bert.
else.
Carmel's back too.
Yay.
The
Carmel's in the house.
yeah, the part that we're looking at is verse 22, 11:22.
11:22. Okay.
Okay, as you recall, this whole chapter has to do with living by faith.
Yes.
Before we get to chapter 11, there was the phrase or the verse in chapter 10, verse 36 that says, you need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. For in just a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. Verse 38 then says, but my righteous one will live by faith. See? So while we're waiting for the Lord's return, how are you going to live?
By faith.
And the answer is, we live by faith.
Yes.
And so then he gets into describing faith. Faith is being sure of the things we hope for and certain of the things we cannot see. And this is what the ancients were commended for. The ancients are the elders, right? Those who were long gone before us, and not us specific, not us as far as, the ancients before us. We're talking about the ancients before Israel came into being. So the ancients, we're talking about way back then, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then before them. So they were commended for their faith, and he lists them all down. We're in Hebrews chapter 11 now. And then we went through a lot of the heroes of faith, examples of faith, all the way from Abel to Enoch to Noah to Abraham to Isaac, and then to Jacob. And then now we're with Joseph. Okay, are you guys familiar with the story of Joseph? That's chapter 11, verse 22. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. Do you guys know the story of Joseph? Because if the answer is no, well, we'll have an opportunity to cover his story. Does everybody have a question about Joseph? Because we're a mixed group, so not necessarily. I don't take it for granted that everybody knows the story of Joseph.
I don't. Yeah, I don't remember the Battle of the Bones. Know most of it, but
okay,
I think it's a good review.
There's a lot of resources there concerning Joseph. In fact, there's actually a movie about Joseph. There's a musical about Joseph.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Do you guys hear it?
Right.
Yeah,
the Technicolor
Joseph,
coat.
Yeah, that's right. Joseph and the Technicolor dream coat.
Dream coat. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was like a Broadway musical.
Oh, okay.
And
Like
it's
New York.
yeah,
And
but
a movie.
they had it.
Yeah.
For a while. It goes back years ago.
Yeah.
You're talking almost 30, 40,
Oh, wow.
maybe even 50 years ago.
Where are we, Pastor? I came late. This is Ophelia.
Yeah, so we're talking about Joseph's faith.
Yes.
As referenced in Hebrews 11:22.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the kitty with a hoodie.
And a lot of these things, if you notice, when they're talking about faith, it's action.
Yeah.
Right? They do something, but they do something that's related to faith. When Joseph when his end was near, by faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the Exodus. See, so it's his faith that was speaking about the Exodus. And remember, from Joseph to the Exodus, it's probably about 300 years. He was by faith speaking forth what would happen in 300 years, approximately 300 years. So to learn more of the story of Joseph, we have to go back and read it. And it's found in Genesis. And I don't mind, going over it again, because it's a good refresher to learn the story of Joseph. Okay. And like I said, there's movies about it. And if I could share the movie, I would do that.
Can you?
Yeah, I'll probably try to look it up in YouTube to see if there's any movies out there. Okay, first of all, who is Joseph, right?
The son of Jacob,
Okay, as you know,
the favorite one.
yeah, so he was the favorite one. And we can find his story in chapter 37 of Genesis. Okay, so we're gonna review that story, guys, and circle it to know that you're covering the story of Joseph, chapter 37. So as you know, Jacob had 12 sons, and at this point, we're looking at Jacob, and so he's described living in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. Verse 2. So this is the account of Jacob. Okay. So we got to connect Joseph to Jacob. Jacob is his father. Okay. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of the other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made a richly ornamented robe for him. Do you guys get the backdrop so far of the story of Joseph? Okay, so the fact that we have Joseph being counted as daddy's favorite.
Yes.
You are daddy's favorite. Okay. So he made a special robe for him. Could you imagine how all the other brothers feel?
Jealous.
Jealous.
It's understandable, right? The human emotion. Yeah. So verse 4 says, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Boy, look at that. The 12 tribes of Israel, and we're looking at hatred. See? And yet they're chosen. Do you guys remember that? They were chosen, See how God's grace, acknowledges their hatred, their sins, and yet God does overlook it because of his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and God's purpose for the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph had a dream, verse 5. And when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. I mean, could you imagine? And they all lived together. Oh man, I don't think I can stand living there if I'm around,
A lot of brothers.
a lot of brothers who hate me. Could you imagine? I'll just have lunch by myself. I'll just have dinner all by myself. I'll have dinner alone. But let's continue. So they hated him all the more because of this dream. He said to them, listen to this dream. Okay, so this is an indication that Joseph had a gift, this spiritual gift. He's a very gifted person, and he has a He has a dream that he's going to share to his brothers. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. What is that picture of? Right? It's a dream, but it's like all the brothers are bowing down to Joseph. That's how this dream is interpreted. Do you want to be one of those brothers who are being told you're going to be bowing down to your younger brother? And so that was the dream. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more. Man, a lot of hate going on. And you know, that's the act of the sinful nature, hate. Think about it. We all get caught up in all these big sins, you know, murder, adultery, greed, and sexual immorality. All these sins we all, you know, acknowledge as those are acts of the sinful nature. Well, how about hatred? See, that's part of the list. You know, there are some Christians who look down on other Christians for their sins. Sometimes you might even condemn yourself for your own sins. But do you pay attention to the fact that you have hatred? You know, and that hatred is a sin, and it is an act of the sinful nature. You know, it starts in your heart, right? But eventually, if you keep stirring up that hatred, well, it's going to result in some serious sin. Anyway, so it says they hated Joseph. For those who just arrived, welcome aboard, guys. We're looking at Genesis chapter 37, and we're looking up the story of Joseph in reference to Hebrews. We're looking at Joseph's faith. But Joseph was gifted. He had a dream. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? And because of that dream, they hated him all the more. And so, you know, he was sharing his dream, and there are scholars who question, maybe he should not have shared that dream. See? But he said it. Maybe out of immaturity, he shared that dream, didn't think about how everybody would react to him sharing that dream.
Pastor Bert, is this Genesis? Can I have the chapter again?
Sure. Genesis chapter 37.
37.
Yeah, we're looking up the story of Joseph being hated because of his dreams.
Yes. Thank you.
So, strike one. His father counts him as the favorite. So I hate him already, because who am I? I'm nobody to my father compared to him. Number two, he has a special dream that tells everybody that he will be ruling over me. So I hate him for that already. 2 strikes, right? For those who just joined us, we're now in Genesis chapter 37, verse...
This is a good cheese. Thank you, Deborah.
What is it? Verse 29. 37:9 of Genesis. We're talking about Joseph, and we're talking about the fact that he's loved by his father Jacob, but all the rest of the brothers, they hate him. And so now he has a second dream. So verse 9 says, he had another dream.
The fiber you have dialed is not in service. If you feel you've received this message in error, please hang up and try your call again later.
Right.
GA1.
It's technology. It's all right. It's what we deal with all the time.
No error.
But I do have to manage the background noise. So thank you all for being patient, because love is patient and love is kind. Okay, so we're continuing along, and let's finish the second dream now. So he told to his brothers, listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Could you imagine a dream like that? They were bowing down to me.
Wow.
They hate him already.
Yeah.
And now he's sharing this dream, and it's like, oh, he's rubbing it. You know, he's rubbing salt in the wounds. So verse 10 says, when he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? Even his parents, right? And so his brothers were jealous of him, you know, hate that guy. But look what it says, but his father kept the matter in mind. So it was something that the father says, wonder if there's something to these dreams, you know, because there's something special about Joseph. The father seemed to recognize it. Not only was he his favorite, but he also recognized there was something special about Joseph. You know, Joseph has a gift. And these dreams, right, don't know if they're going to happen, they're going to come to pass or not. We don't know if this is going to be the future, but we'll see. Okay? And so now, the reality. There's a difference between the dreams and the reality. Now, I don't know about you guys as far as dreams are concerned. There was this one guy who used to specialize on trying to interpret dreams, and he was pretty good, actually. But there is let's just look at it like there is a school of thought that believes you can interpret dreams in a biblical way. Your dreams can be interpreted biblically, and God gives you those dreams. Okay, that's one school of thought. The other school of thought, you know, there's a challenge in trying to interpret dreams, because it's not going to be 100% as some say it can be.
Would that be a premonition, Pastor Bert?
No, I think a dream is what you receive when you're asleep. So premonition is like a feeling.
Oh.
So and we don't use the word premonition here in this context. We're using dreams.
Dreams.
Okay. And since dreams is something that you experience while you're sleeping, yeah. If you guys ever had to deal with a nightmare, okay, you could be getting a spiritual attack. So not all dreams are from God. Just to keep that in mind. Also, another thing to keep in mind is the fact that when you experience a bad dream, right, you actually can receive it as a warning from the Lord. Mm-hmm. So there's this whole area of dreams from God or from the enemy. It takes some discernment. One woman, I think she had a dream about her son drowning or something like that. And so she got really worried and was afraid that it was going to happen. And she was almost waiting for it to happen. That's not how God wants you to live. If you have a dream like that, well, it's a warfare, right? And so you should acknowledge the warfare. So you should acknowledge the warfare and rebuke that, and then use it as a point of prayer. I pray that my son will not, in the name of Jesus, I pray my son will not drown. You know, I by faith I claim it, right? By faith I declare it. Whatever your faith takes you. Daphne, your thoughts about what we're talking about with dreams?
Yes, sir. My oldest daughter, she was one of the twins. She had a dream that her brother got shot. Well, a week and a half later, it happened that it was her father that got shot. But in the end, you know what I'm saying, Bo died from a bullet wound. He did. So I don't know what that was, but that was way before it even happened.
Yeah. See, so that's the mystery of dreams. It's really hard to pinpoint 100% of the time. But that's why we live by faith. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that there is an area of, you know, study, an area that does think about dreams as something from God. And so just be aware that it is. In this case with Joseph, it's definitely from God, as we will find out later. Deborah has her hand raised. I'm not going to show you raising your hand, but Deborah, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
So for my dreams, interestingly, you know, we already talked about when I feel like the enemy's attacking me and I say Jesus. But
yeah,
recently I've been having dreams. The other night I had a dream, not the other night, like a month ago, that Sarah and I were drowning in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
We were drowning. There's this big wave coming over us, and I yelled out, Jesus! And this hand just came out like that and saved us.
Okay.
So I have dreams like that.
Yeah. So those kind of dreams, you know, and everybody, you know, whatever dream you have, it's something you can bring before God, and you know, however you are able to process it. Some people think about, you know, the symbolism in the dreams, just like this. The first dream is sheaves, right? These are like wheat that's bound up. So what does that symbolize? The fact that there's the number of what is it? Number 12, is it?
Bound up.
Yeah, that's what sheaves are.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like when they get the wheat,
Yeah.
and then they bound it, and
Yeah.
then they, you know, they
Yeah.
keep doing that. This is the harvest, right?
The harvest.
Yeah. So the fact that that happens. Oh, my friend from Philippines is calling me. Let me just answer this real quick, because it's from the Philippines. Hey, Robert.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm actually right in the middle of class. I got a Zoom class going on, but I wanted to pick up your call because I want to call you or touch base with you after class, and we can talk about the funeral arrangements, you know, the memorial.
Yes, okay.
So I'll call you back.
Roughly, what, half an hour? Whenever?
Half an hour, in about half an hour.
All right, I'll just kick back and wait.
Okay, bro. Thank you for returning my call.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so what was I saying? Dreams, it's an area that I think I wish it was clear cut. Some of them make it clear cut, you know, but I don't want to get too caught up into the fact that it's out there for us to acknowledge. But for the sake of our study, I wanted to give you something that people relate to dreams, right? And this is what Joseph was dealing with. He has these dreams. He doesn't force these dreams. It just comes to him, right? And obviously, in his faith in God, he must be processing these dreams and saying, God, what are you telling me? Or why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this, God? Right? It's got to be processed. Well, let's figure it out. Now, his brothers, verse 12, are you guys fascinated by this story so far? I hope you are. There's actually a good movie called
Yes.
Joseph, Prince of Dreams.
Yes.
I wish we can watch it together. We
It's
can have a
very
viewing
interesting.
party. But verse 12 now says, his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them. So the idea is he's like a homebody, right? He stays at home while all of them are working out in the fields. Okay. So again, he's in a special place by his dad. You know, my favorite son. You stay home. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? Okay, I just want to make a note here. This is like one of those divine appointments that you might want to take into consideration. You know, you're looking and then somebody comes and tells you where to go. So he replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved on from here, the man answered. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. Not Gotham City, Dothan. Okay, for the Batman fans out there. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. See what hatred does? Their hate was so strong that they really wanted to kill them in their heart. Now he's in their territory and they're saying, listen, man, I want to kill him. Let's plan a way to kill him. Here comes that dreamer. You know, they're mocking him. They said to each other, that dreamer, remember his dream? What was his dream? We're all going to be bowing down to him. He's going to rule over us. We're going to kill him so that dream will never happen, right? Okay. So Joseph was called the dreamer, and they said, come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. Man, they are so full of hatred. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Now, Reuben, he's the firstborn. I don't know if you remember. Firstborn out of the 12. And Reuben did something where he slept with one of his father's maids. He defiled his father's marriage bed, you can say. But now here's a man who has a conscience now concerning his brother. See, so, you know, as much as you fail in one area, you know what? Reuben is now trying to rescue his brother.
What was it? Do you know what the lady's name was that he had the affair with? Was it Tamar?
No.
No.
It's either Bilhah or Zilpah.
Oh.
Because those are the maids of Rachel and Rebecca.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But you can look it up. Just do a word search on Reuben.
All right.
But as we continue the story, right? He tried to rescue him from their hands, and he says, let's not take his life. Remember, they didn't want this dream to come true, right? No way it's going to happen. If he's dead, there's no way we're going to be bowing down to him. But look what happens. He rescues. He plans a rescue for him. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. See, so Reuben's a good guy here. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, that special ornamented robe, right? The richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they didn't have a conscience, right? They threw him in that cistern, deep pit. And then they said, let's have lunch.
Wow.
They had no conscience, right? They didn't feel bad at all, right?
Excuse me, Pastor Bert. What chapter are you in Genesis?
Chapter 37.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm now in verse 26. 25. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites. Now, who are Ishmaelites? Do you guys remember who Ishmaelites are?
They're related to Ishmael?
And they're light.
They are related to Ishmael. Remember, Ishmael is the son of Abraham's from his sleeping with Hagar.
Half brother of Isaac.
Yeah. So you see there's a connection. The Ishmaelites, they're family in a sense. But they were coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh. They're traders of goods. And they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Verse 26, Judah, which is one of the other brothers, right? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. So Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother. Remember, they wanted to make sure that dream is not going to happen. And look what's happening now, God is making a way for his dream to come to pass in the future. But for now, it's looking like they wanted to end it. It was not going to end, right? Because God puts people in places where,
he wants them to be.
That dream is going to come to pass. So now, as we read this story, it continues by saying that, they're going to sell him to the Ishmaelites. and so forget about trying to kill him. And, there's logic there, right? What would you rather do? Get rid of your brother or kill him with your bare hands and have blood in your hands, right?
Yeah.
If we sell him, at least we'll get some money from it, okay?
Yeah.
So don't lay hands on him. So after all, he's our brother, our own flesh and blood. So all his brothers, remember, you got to convince the rest of all the brothers, all the 11, what is it? No, all the 10 brothers, because Joseph is 11, his younger brother, Benjamin, is number 12. So when they all agreed, so when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. Okay, so they were slave traders. Okay, slavery has been around since the beginning. There is an example of that in the book of Genesis.
Very common in the day.
Back in the day, right?
Still is.
So when Reuben returned to the cistern, right, because he was planning to save his brother Joseph, and he saw that Joseph was not there, he was like, oh no, they killed him. So he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now? Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornamented robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it's your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal had devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Could you imagine that deception to their own father in his old age, telling him basically your favorite son is dead?
Yep.
Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days, which is their custom, which we acknowledge, right? We don't do that today, but tearing your clothes and putting on sackcloth and mourning for your son's death, that's their custom. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, in mourning will I go down to the grave to my son. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, so while that's happening with Jacob, concerning the report of what happened to his favorite son Joseph, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Potiphar's officials, the captain of the guard. Okay, so now we're traveling through this story of Joseph by acknowledging the fact that now he is becoming a slave to an Egyptian official, Pharaoh's official. Okay, so now he's in Egypt. And that's as far as we can go with this story. There's a story of Judah and Tamar in chapter 38. We read that before, by the way. The story of Judah and Tamar. I don't know if you guys remember that story. But we'll continue the story of Joseph and Potiphar when we get to chapter 39. Because, you know, this is why when you talk about what's the book of Genesis all about, people will say, oh, it's about creation. It's about the fall. It's about, you know, Adam and Eve. That's just the first 12 chapters. We are now focusing on the family of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, because Joseph is very instrumental, okay, in the salvation of his family. But what I wanted to point out, let me see if I have it here. When Joseph is about to die, okay, because we're going to skip all that for now. I want you to see what his faith drove him to say, because that's what's being commended when we're reading Hebrews chapter 11, right? It doesn't talk about all the things that, you know, he did that he's being commended for, although obviously we know it's worth being giving him commendation. What we're focusing on is the fact that this is what he said when he died, or when he was about to die. And so we go to Genesis chapter 50. I should ask you, how many chapters in the book of Genesis?
50.
Very good. 50 chapters. Okay. When it talks about how Joseph dies, look what it says in verse 22. Chapter 50, verse 22. It says, Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years old. That's another trivia question. And saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, also the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at the birth on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, okay, so they, to kind of spoiler alert, they do end up becoming reconciled.
Right.
Okay. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die. But God, now this is his faith, okay? And this is what he's commended for. But God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we're talking about the land that we're all living in Egypt right now, right? But God's going to take you, because I'm going to die, going to take all of you out of here and bring you to the land that he promised, which is modern day Israel. Give or take, right? But it's modern day Israel right now. So that's the promised land. And so God's going to take you there, okay? You're going to be leaving Egypt in the future. That's what's going to happen. And Joseph made the sons of Israel, all his brothers, I want you to swear to me on oath, okay? This is what he said. This is his faith, okay? Swear an oath and said to them, God will surely come to your aid, and then you, his family, must carry my bones up from this place. The fact that his faith was so strong and he was so convinced that God was going to take him out of Egypt. That's why when you get to Exodus, that's where the story continues. But the fact that they were going to be taken out of Egypt, and it says, when you leave, take my bones. Now, what does that mean, take my bones? The way they buried people back in those days was to put them in like a dry, it's desert. So they put them like in a cave or something. And that would be like a tomb, right? And they would let their body decompose, okay? And if you continue to let it decompose, the only remaining thing that will be in that tomb, that cave, will be the bones, because all all the decomposition, the bugs, and all that will take care of all the rest of. And then remember, this is over hundreds of years, but it doesn't take hundreds of years for the body to decompose and leave bones. I don't know exactly how long it takes, but it's not hundreds of years. What they do once it's complete, they take those bones, right? And they put it, I think the term is esophagus, but they put it in like a chest, like the size of a large microwave oven. And it's built with stone, carved stone and everything, with a cover, and then they take the bones and they put it in there. Okay. And that's where they, like when you bury the ashes, you entomb it, right? So
Like
it's
an urn.
now, this is the bones of Joseph. And he says, when you leave, take my bones and bring it to the promised land. And that's the kind of faith Joseph had. That kind of faith is being commended. You guys get it now?
Yes.
So in wrapping up this story,
Yes.
let's go back to Hebrews chapter 11, where we all started. And in Hebrews chapter 11, by faith, verse 22, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions about his bones. His act of speaking and telling them and giving them instructions about his bones, make sure you take my bones to the promised land. That kind of faith is being commended. And that's what we have there in what living by faith is like. He was so convinced that this was going to happen and you can see because of all the experiences that Joseph had, if you know the whole story of Joseph,
Mhm.
it can make sense that, you know, the dreams that he had did come to pass, and that he was truly blessed by God. And then now he knew that God's going to make this happen as well. You know, the story of all of them leaving Egypt. Don't leave my bones in Egypt. I wanted to go to the promised land. All right. So that's what we have with what it's like to live by faith. You pick up all this knowledge about God's word, and then you live by faith, holding on to those promises. You know? So that's what you have here. The next story will be about Moses. Parents, Moses' parents. Not just Moses, but his parents. I should ask a trivia question with that. What are the names of Moses' parents?
Mom and dad.
Very good. All right, very clever.
That was good, Robert.
And on that note, let's close in prayer, guys. Who would like to close us in prayer? Susie, I'm glad you're back home.
Yes,
Yeah.
Pastor Bert, I'll pray.
Yes.
All right, great. Let me stop the recording.